The year is 1942, and the world is locked in the brutal grip of war. In Europe, the Allied forces face the relentless onslaught of the Axis powers. On the shores of Britain, the Royal Air Force is preparing for a massive aerial offensive against Nazi Germany. The Battle of Britain is a memory now, but the strain on Britain's military infrastructure remains ever present. As the war continues, both the Allies and the Axis are racing to build and deploy the structures that will house their soldiers, engineers, and equipment. The urgency is felt in every corner of the battlefield. Tents and temporary shelters are no longer adequate for the growing demands of war. It is within this chaotic, desperate period that two revolutionary shelter designs emerge: the Quonset Hut in America and the Nissen Hut in Britain. Both would serve as temporary shelters for the military, but only one would stand the test of time. In the dense fog of British winter, with the hum of airplane engines reverberating across the airfields, the Nissen Hut was born. Designed by British engineer Peter Nissen, it quickly became the staple of wartime Britain. The curved, corrugated steel structure was sturdy, efficient, and cost-effective. As it was manufactured in pre-assembled segments, it could be quickly deployed in any location, regardless of terrain. Its semi-cylindrical shape provided maximum internal space while minimizing material usage. It was a godsend to a country stretched thin by war and bombings, where anything that could save time, money, and resources was a victory in itself. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the United States was also facing the logistical nightmare of war. With their military stretched across the globe, the need for quick, adaptable shelter for soldiers and personnel became critical. The U.S. Army turned to engineers at the Construction Engineering Research Laboratory to develop a new, more efficient design. The result was the Quonset Hut, named after the Quonset Point Naval Air Station in Rhode Island, where it was first used. Its design was inspired by the Nissen Hut, but adapted for the American military's different needs. At first glance, the Quonset Hut seemed poised to outshine its British predecessor. Larger, with a more refined, modern look, it featured a similar curved design but was made of lighter, more flexible materials. The idea was that it could be assembled in a fraction of the time it took to build traditional military barracks. The Quonset Hut was easier to transport and could be shipped in prefabricated parts. It promised ease of construction, durability, and the ability to house large numbers of personnel in conditions that would be tolerable, if not ideal. But in the harsh realities of the Second World War, the Quonset Hut was not as adaptable as it seemed. The British Nissen Hut, for all its simplicity, proved more resilient in the face of the conditions on the ground. One of the most significant differences was the Nissen Hut's ability to withstand the weight of snow. As winter storms hit Britain, the Quonset Hut's lighter construction was vulnerable to collapse under the weight of snow. This proved to be a major flaw, especially in the colder climates of northern Europe, where snow accumulation could be substantial. The Nissen Hut, with its curved roof, was able to shed snow effectively, ensuring that it stayed intact even in the most extreme weather conditions. Additionally, the Nissen Hut's construction allowed for a level of insulation that the Quonset Hut simply couldn't match. The thicker steel of the Nissen Hut provided a better barrier against the elements, while the Quonset Hut, with its thinner, more flexible material, was prone to temperature fluctuations. In the harsh, unpredictable weather of the European front, where soldiers often had to endure freezing temperatures, the Nissen Hut became the preferred shelter for many. But it wasn't just the weather that favored the Nissen Hut. The British design was also more adaptable to the types of terrain that soldiers faced. The Quonset Hut, with its larger footprint and less forgiving shape, was better suited to more open, flat areas like airfields and training grounds. It was a design that made sense for the vast, sprawling landscapes of the Pacific or North Africa, where the U.S. military often operated. But in the mud-soaked fields of Western Europe, where the ground was often uneven and flooded, the Nissen Hut's simplicity and more flexible foundation made it more suitable for long-term use. Furthermore, the Nissen Hut had a level of familiarity and widespread acceptance that the Quonset Hut simply couldn't overcome. By the time the U.S. Army began deploying Quonset Huts on a large scale, the British had already mastered the use of the Nissen hut. British military engineers and soldiers knew exactly how to set up and maintain the structure in a variety of settings. They understood its quirks and strengths. In contrast, American soldiers had to adapt to a new design that had not yet been tested in the field as thoroughly. The Quonset hut, while promising, lacked the legacy of reliability that the Nissen hut had already built. The cost-effectiveness of the Nissen hut was also a significant factor in its lasting dominance. While the Quonset hut was cheaper to produce than traditional wooden barracks, the Nissen hut's simplicity and low material cost made it even more affordable. In the face of the limited resources and raw materials available to Britain during the war, this made the Nissen hut an invaluable asset. Its cost efficiency allowed the British to produce and deploy them quickly, making it the perfect solution for a nation at war. By the time the war ended, the Nissen hut had become the symbol of Britain's wartime ingenuity. Thousands of these shelters were built across the country, used for everything from military barracks to storage units, and even as civilian homes in the post-war years. The design's simplicity and functionality ensured that it would remain in use for decades, with some of the huts still standing today in various locations across Britain. The Quonset hut, despite its initial promise, had a more mixed legacy. It became an iconic symbol of American military efficiency, but its vulnerability in the field meant that it was largely relegated to use in non-combat zones, such as air bases and logistics centers. Over time, the Quonset hut was phased out in favor of more permanent, stable structures that could withstand the rigors of battle. While it served its purpose during the war, it never gained the same level of enduring cultural and functional significance that the Nissen hut would enjoy. The story of the Quonset hut and the Nissen hut serves as a testament to the practical ingenuity of wartime engineering. The Nissen hut, with its simple utilitarian design, proved that sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that prioritize resilience and adaptability over complexity. The Quonset hut, while a symbol of American innovation, ultimately couldn't overcome the environmental and practical challenges faced by soldiers on the front lines in Europe. It was a design that was ultimately outpaced by the realities of war, just as the war itself would be defined by rapid innovation and unexpected challenges. The contrasting legacies of the Quonset and Nissen huts reflect the broader themes of adaptability, resourcefulness, and the often unpredictable nature of wartime innovation. As the war concluded, and both the US and Britain moved into peacetime, the use of these structures took on new meanings, symbolizing the unique challenges faced by each country and their military forces during the conflict. For the British, the Nissen hut became a symbol not just of wartime ingenuity, but of national endurance. After the war, the country was left grappling with the economic aftermath of its long battle against Nazi Germany. The bombed-out cities, broken infrastructure, and destroyed homes required immediate attention. The Nissen hut, still standing, strong after years of use, became a practical solution to Britain's housing crisis. It was transformed from a wartime military shelter into a civilian dwelling, often serving as homes for families who had lost everything during the Blitz. These converted Nissen huts became the temporary homes of many, offering a semblance of stability amid the destruction. As the years passed, the Nissen hut's role in British society grew, and its impact on the national consciousness expanded. In fact, in some cases, these huts were given an almost nostalgic value. The enduring presence of the Nissen hut, still standing on former military airfields and sites across the UK, was a testament to Britain's ability to adapt, survive, and rebuild. It became a symbol of the country's resilience, of how the British people had weathered the storm of war and emerged on the other side, still standing. For the Americans, the Quonset hut would also find new life, though not in the same widespread, iconic manner as the Nissen hut. While it was originally designed for military use during the war, it too would have a role in the post-war world. However, unlike the Nissen hut, the Quonset hut did not find its place in civilian life to the same degree. In fact, the Quonset hut was often seen as a symbol of the military-industrial complex, a temporary solution for a global war, and once the war ended, It was largely replaced by more permanent structures designed for peacetime. In the aftermath of the war, the Quonset hut was employed for various purposes, including as storage facilities and even as temporary office spaces. But its legacy remained more closely tied to the military, particularly in the vast expanse of military bases across the United States and in overseas territories. While it did see some use in civilian applications, particularly in remote areas where more permanent buildings were impractical, the Quonset hut became largely synonymous with military deployment, serving as a reminder of the logistical challenges of war and the attempts to create solutions in the face of overwhelming need. The Quonset hut's failure to live up to its initial promise of becoming the dominant design for wartime shelters ultimately led to its decline in favor of more durable and reliable structures. Over time, as newer technologies and construction methods evolved, the Quonset hut was phased out. By the 1960s, most of the Quonset huts built during World War II had either been dismantled or repurposed for storage or less demanding roles. It was a relic of a past era, its potential never fully realized in the way that the Nissen hut had been in Britain. However, there was one significant aspect of the Quonset hut that endured beyond its physical form. The lessons learned from its design, particularly its emphasis on prefabrication and portability, would resonate in future military and civilian construction efforts. In the years after the war, the idea of building structures that could be quickly and efficiently assembled in remote or temporary locations would influence future designs, particularly in disaster relief and humanitarian efforts. The Quonset hut's failure to thrive in wartime Europe did not mean the end of its legacy. Instead, it paved the way for the future of modular, prefabricated building techniques. The Nissen hut's continued legacy, on the other hand, became part of a larger story of post-war reconstruction and renewal. It was not just a building. It was a symbol of the triumph of British ingenuity and resourcefulness. While it was designed to serve a specific utilitarian purpose during wartime, its adaptability to post-war needs helped shape the rebuilding of a nation. The Nissen hut embodied the spirit of a country that had endured unimaginable hardship and had found a way to move forward, using the resources at hand to rebuild its cities and provide for its people. Today, Nissen huts remain scattered across Britain, some in use, some abandoned, but all standing as silent witnesses to the legacy of wartime Britain. They are reminders of the sacrifices made by so many, the lives lost, and the resilience of a nation that refused to be broken. In many ways, they are the physical manifestation of the British resolve that won the war, a quiet testament to the power of adaptation, resilience, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. For the Quonset hut, its legacy is more fragmented. While it never became a post-war symbol of American resilience in the same way the Nissen hut did for Britain, it remains a valuable piece of history. The lessons learned from its design influenced future military architecture and disaster relief efforts. It may not have had the lasting impact of the Nissen hut, but it was a symbol of American ingenuity, and it served its purpose during the war in ways that cannot be ignored. Though it is no longer a ubiquitous presence in the American landscape, its significance in the context of wartime innovation and logistics remains an important chapter in the story of World War II. In the end, the story of the Quonset hut and the Nissen hut is a story of two nations, two designs, and two very different approaches to solving the same problem: how to create effective, adaptable shelter in the most challenging of circumstances. Both served their purpose in the context of the war. But it was the Nissen hut that ultimately stood the test of time, proving that sometimes simplicity, resilience, and adaptability are the keys to survival in the face of war. As the years passed, the Quonset and Nissen huts continued to be symbols of wartime ingenuity, but their fates diverged in ways that reflected broader differences in post-war military and societal priorities. The Nissen hut, with its distinctive curved steel roof and robust design, had already proven itself in the chaos of war. Its versatility and ability to endure harsh environmental conditions made it the choice of British military engineers. Yet beyond the military uses, it became a symbol of Britain's post-war recovery. As the UK struggled to rebuild after the devastation of the Second World War, the Nissen hut found new life. Its simplicity allowed for easy adaptation, and many were converted into homes for families displaced by bombings or those living in desperate conditions. These modest huts became part of the landscape of post-war Britain, dotting towns and countryside alike. The legacy of the Nissen Hut was far-reaching. It wasn't just an emergency shelter, it became a lasting part of British culture and architecture. Many of these structures lasted well beyond their intended lifespan, some even being used as storage sheds or small business spaces long into the 1980s and beyond. Some still stand today, a testament to their design's durability and utility. The British also turned to these huts as temporary homes for soldiers returning from war and veterans who had nowhere else to go. In the aftermath of the war, when resources were stretched thin, the Nissen Hut was seen as a practical, if humble, solution for a society struggling to rebuild. In contrast, the Quonset Hut's legacy was more focused on military utility and logistics rather than societal recovery. The US military, with its vast global presence, had an ongoing need for temporary shelters. Quonset huts were deployed not just during World War II, but also during the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and even into the Cold War era. The design's flexibility, along with the fact that it could be easily transported and assembled in remote or difficult-to-reach locations, made it indispensable in a variety of military operations. However, as the years wore on, the Quonset Hut began to be replaced by more permanent and specialized structures. The limitations of its design became evident. While it was a quick and effective solution for a time, it was never intended to serve long-term needs in hostile environments. The Quonset Hut's thin metal walls and vulnerable roof design, which could be easily compromised by heavy snow, wind, or long-term wear, became impractical in the face of evolving military needs. Yet, despite its shortcomings, the Quonset Hut was a symbol of the wartime drive for innovation. It demonstrated the American military's ability to rapidly adapt and create solutions under extreme pressure. The fact that so many Quonset Huts were built in such a short time is itself a testament to the scale of US mobilization and the need for quick, cost-effective solutions to an overwhelming logistical challenge. The Quonset Hut wasn't just a building. It was a response to the pressing realities of war and the technological limitations of the time. The post-war era also saw the Quonset Hut morph into a symbol of industrial and military practicality. In the US, they were sometimes used for purposes beyond military applications, becoming warehouses, workshops, and storage units in various industries. As they were phased out in favor of more permanent, durable structures, the Quonset Hut's impact on the architectural and military landscape remained undeniable. The principles of prefabrication and modular design, which the Quonset Hut embodied, would influence future construction practices, both in military and civilian spheres. The use of prefabricated, mass-produced buildings became a key component of Cold War-era architecture, as the US military and other industries continued to rely on quick, efficient solutions for temporary structures. Yet unlike the Nissen Hut, the Quonset Hut never captured the imagination of the general public in quite the same way. In Britain, the Nissen Hut became a part of the nation's identity, rooted in the country's wartime history and its post-war recovery. In contrast, the Quonset Hut remained more of a military tool, associated with the American military's global operations, and it was rarely seen as a symbol of civilian resilience or adaptation. It was useful, but not as ingrained in the national consciousness. Looking back, the Nissen Hut's ability to transcend its original military purpose and become a fixture in British society highlights the adaptability and lasting impact of a simple yet effective design. It was a structure that not only served its original function, but found new purpose in a civilian context, helping a nation rebuild itself from the ashes of war. The Quonset Hut, while instrumental in military operations, did not enjoy the same long-lasting, multifaceted legacy. It was a product of a different need, serving the American military's global ambitions and operational flexibility. Ultimately, the two huts' differing fates illustrate the broader contrast between wartime innovation and post-war adaptation. The Nissen Hut, simple and resilient, became part of Britain's physical and cultural landscape, its legacy enduring far beyond the war that had spawned it. The Quonset hut, on the other hand, was a temporary solution to a temporary problem. Its legacy largely confined to the military and logistical domains. Both structures, however, stand as testaments to the creativity and practicality required to meet the needs of a world at war. The Nissen hut's lasting presence and the Quonset hut's influence on later designs show that even the most utilitarian creations can have profound effects on history, shaping not only the course of a war, but the way nations rebuild and redefine themselves in its aftermath. In the end, while the Nissen hut became an icon of wartime resilience for the British, the Quonset hut was a symbol of American adaptability, its legacy defined not by its place in civilian life, but by its role in the sprawling, ever-changing logistics of the American military. The story of these two designs is a reflection of their country's experiences during and after World War II, a tale of innovation, survival, and the ability to face overwhelming odds, each in its own way.